Hi guys, it's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my latest obsession. I was inspired by Carrie Ann English at Shabby Art Boutique, and I will link, I believe I saw the picture on Instagram, but it may have been a blog post. Either way, I will link to where I saw her picture, where she crocheted around, she did a circle, and I just was like, I don't know, I was just inspired. So I used to crochet, just a little, backstory here. I had a crochet business on Etsy. I did craft fairs, the whole thing. But over the course of, I guess I did it for a couple years. And then I developed arthritis in my hands, and I was no longer able to crochet at the amount and rate of speed that I needed to be able to keep up with an actual business. So I stopped doing that. It was very difficult. It was a difficult time because crocheting was not only a business for me, it was my therapy, and all of a sudden I didn't have that anymore. And that's when I found junk journaling. So fast forward, I got rid of a lot of yarn that I donated it to a lady who was starting up her own little business, and I kept some, that I thought might be, usable in junk journaling. And one of the things I kept was all of my crochet thread. Now, I like the way that looks best on the paper. I think it's nice and delicate and, like shabby chic looking. But you can use whatever you want. This doesn't have to be, because the thread is quite difficult to work with, especially when you have arthritis. So, this is something that I'm not going to do all the time. But for this particular journal that I'm working on, which is an Alice in Wonderland journal, and I'm using printable kits from My Porch Prints, it just seemed to go perfectly. So that's where we are now. When I make this video, I am assuming that you have a basic knowledge of crochet. Basic meaning that you know what a chain stitch is, what single crochet, double crochet, slip stitch. I'm just assuming that you already know how to do that. If you do not, and you would like to learn to crochet, I am not going to be the one that is going to be the best teacher for you, mostly because my technique has had to adapt for my hands, and so I'm not that great at showing you how to do it. However, if you look up in the right corner of the screen, you will see something pop up right now, and that is a link to the lady's channel where I learned to crochet. Her name is Shandy. Her channel is Expression Fiber Arts. Her main thing is dyeing yarn, which her yarn is just gorgeous to look at. However, she has some beginner tutorials, very beginner tutorials on how to crochet different stitches. And that's how I learned. She's fabulous at teaching. So if you want to learn to crochet and then you can come back later and watch the rest of this video, just hit that little, hit that little link up in the right corner of the screen. All right, so we are just assuming that you already know how to crochet, so I'm not going to go into that. First, let me show you some of the pieces that I've made. The first two that I did were these adorable little teacups. And this is a kit in and of itself in Stephanie's shop. Now these I'm going to use, they have a little pocket in the front here, and then I'm probably going to use them as, you know, another pocket in the back. So for these, I did use some just regular packing tape to kind of, you know, hold down everything so that nothing is getting caught on the stitches on the back. Okay, but what I'm going to do today is a tag, and obviously you don't want to have all of that on the back because it's going to be showing. But anyway, I used like an antique-y kind of linen color for this one, and then this one is just kind of like a, you know, a shabby pink. I don't know what you call it, but that's that. And then those I had posted on social media yesterday, and I got a huge response from that. So thank you everyone who has commented and said how much you love those. So I went ahead and did a few more because someone asked if I could do some other pieces. So this was just a pocket watch piece from the kit, and I used the little marks that Stephanie had already put here, like the, you know, the seconds of the clock. And since they only went around this little bit, I just crocheted around that part. So I love that, and that'll probably, you know, sit on an edge of a page and be a tuck spot. So again, I've just got some packing tape on the back to hold everything down there. And then I was like, well, you know, why don't we just keep going? My hands are killing me, just as an FYI. I'm gonna need to take a break from this probably for a couple days. But I went ahead and did the flap of this gorgeous envelope, and I love how that looks. I'm I love it. Yeah, I'm in love. I'm in love with how that looks. So I'm also gonna do, I was gonna do this before I started filming, excuse me, but then my hands were hurting a lot and I wanted to be able to get through the video. So I've only done the blanket stitch, which I'll show you here in a second. So this will be my foundation, and then I'll crochet around that. So I think that's going to be super cute. It's just a little, it'll be just a little booklet of sorts. All right, so what you're going to need now, there are, I'm sure, a million, probably not a million, but a ton of ways that you can do this. I found it easiest to use my Tim Holtz ruler. I don't know if you've ever paid attention, but it has holes already in there. So your little awl or a needle will fit right in those holes, so you can poke fairly even holes without having to do a lot of measuring. And I just used like the guts of a Reader's Digest here as my, you know, surface to poke holes on. Now I've already poked them because I didn't want to spend a lot of time actually poking, but I'll show you what I did. If you look at the ruler here and you see where you have the holes, right? I lined up the edge of my tag with the next line. Okay, so I think it's 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, it's 1/8 of an inch. So you've got your holes, and then I line up the edge of my paper with that next line up or down, or however you want to say it. So basically, I think I did this a little bit further in. I had to be able to get the right number of holes, but normally I would do 1/8 of an inch, but I think this one was more like a quarter. Let me line this up. Now, you want to try, you really want an even number of holes when you're doing this. It doesn't matter how many, but you just want an even number. Now, I did mess up on, let's see, I think it was on this one. And I had an uneven number of holes. However, I don't think that you can even tell. I mean, I'm not even gonna like show you what I did to make it work because, well, I mean, I can. It doesn't matter. Normally I should have had another space here to do my final slip stitch, but instead I just did it in with the shell. So you know, if you make a mistake and you don't have enough, you know, you don't have an even number of holes, it's not the end of the world. However, I did try to do that on this one, and I have one, okay, I ended up with 6 holes. So I just, you know, I use the ruler as a guide, and I determine, okay, I want 6 holes, so where do I need to start to make it kind of centered? And then I just use the holes in the ruler to create, you know, to poke through. I skip, I do every 1/4 inch because I don't know, I like how that looks. You could put them really close together if you wanted to and do 1/8 of an inch in between. I am a little concerned with the paper tearing the closer the holes are to each other, so that's why I've done every 1/4 inch. So after I've done that, so we're done with that. We don't need the book anymore. So you're left with your holes here. The next thing you need to do is a blanket stitch, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This is just going to be the foundation on which we crochet. I think I have seen people that just poke holes or use a hole punch, which is fine too, and just crochet straight into the holes that they punch. I'm again worried about tearing the paper. So if you do this blanket stitch first, you're actually crocheting into, you know, onto those stitches as opposed to crocheting straight into the paper. To me, it feels like I'm less worried about, you know, having to put my actual crochet hook through the holes, because that's it's a lot bigger than, you know, a needle. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking and pay attention to what I'm doing. So I just have a needle that it should be, I haven't had trouble threading this needle until now. Okay, so I think I have about 5 times the length of my, you know, space that I'm gonna blanket stitch on, and it's usually more than you need. All right, so to blanket stitch, I want to have it facing, the holes facing me. Okay, so you can see my holes there. You're always going to come up from the bottom, so we're going to come up from the bottom in that first hole. Okay, and just, you know, leave yourself a little tail, and we'll deal with that later. Now for the first stitch, if you can see here, all right, I'm gonna come back through from the bottom. I'm gonna come back in that same hole, but before I pull it all the way through, I want to kind of create a knot, an anchor, you know, to hold so this stays in place. And how you do that is you wrap your yarn around twice, and I'm saying yarn, but you know, this is thread, and then I'm using my thumb to hold that little wrap in place. Okay, and I'm going to keep my hand there the whole time, and then I'm going to pull through. Okay, so I'm still holding that little knot there. Okay, now once you've pulled it all the way through, you can move your knot up to the top. Well, I mean, essentially it's the bottom, but you get what I'm saying. All right, now we're just gonna go up in the next hole. Okay, and we're gonna pull it most of the way through. We're gonna stop, and you're gonna have this. So this is the loop from this hole to this hole, right? you want to go down through, all right, oops, and then continue pulling through. And this is your first little blanket stitch. So this will be where we do our crocheting, okay? Now we're going to do the same thing, come up in the next hole. Sometimes I have to turn it over and find the hole. There we go. All right. And I just kind of try and hold everything, you know. So pull most of the way through and then drop your needle through that loop that you've created, and there you have the next stitch. All right, now this is what you have so far. I'm hoping that I'm doing this at the right angle here so you can see what I'm doing. It's difficult for me to see what I'm doing, but I want you to be able to see what you're doing, or what I'm doing. I'm sure you can see what you're doing. All right, so we come back up in the next hole. All right, and here's our loop that we have made. Go down in that hole. Just ignore my tail. It keeps getting in the way here. All right, and then pull that through. Okay, and you want it pretty taut, but don't pull too hard. You know, remember, this is just paper. I'm using, I think this was 90-pound cardstock. It may have been 110. I can't remember now which I used, but you know, it's not gonna stand up to a whole lot of pulling, right? All right, and then down through, and then we're on our final hole here, and we're just gonna do the same thing and drop that down to create our last stitch. Now, if I was making this a tuck spot, I would just do like I did here and tape everything down. I wouldn't worry too much about knotting it or, you know, that kind of thing. But this is a tag, so I want to be, you know, I want to be able to, I don't want it to be ugly on the back, right? So we need to knot this. All right, so we have our thread that has come down through this loop here, right? Let me see if I can get it to focus better. So I'm gonna take my needle and go under this front part here, okay? And then we have a loop again. I'm gonna go through that loop, and I'm gonna pull, make sure that stitch is tight, and then that will create a knot right at the top here, okay? So what I did, let me do it again. I went under the stitch, okay? When you do it the first time, you're gonna need to pull this to keep that stitch tight before you make your knot, okay? So I just went through my loop, hold everything nice and tight, and then just make a knot, all right? And you won't really see that later. It really, I mean, it barely shows now, especially with the thread. All right, so I can cut that off. I'm gonna leave just a little bit, and I'm gonna add some glue. Now over here, I'm also gonna add some glue. I'm just using my Barely Art glue right now. You could use anything you want, but I am just gonna add a nice amount of glue around that knot, and then I'm just gonna kind of squish it in there, okay? And then I'm gonna add a little bit of glue along that stitch there, and I'm gonna lay my tail in there, and then I can cut that. Now, this is technically secure because we made that knot to begin with, right? But again, I want this to, you know, hold up over time. So I'm just being extra cautious. So I have glue on the knot here, and I have glue here holding my tail down. Okay. Let me put my glue away. Now, I don't want to take time for that to dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and go for it here now. I'm going to just set that there for a second. So I'm using, like I said, crochet thread. This is probably a number 10. I have no idea. I don't have the wrapper anymore, but it's, you know, it's fairly thin. It's probably maybe the thickness of almost embroidery floss. It's probably a little thinner than that. You could use embroidery floss for this if you wanted to. You can just pull your strands out of your embroidery floss if you think it's too thick. You know, you can play around with it. All right, so like I said, I'm going to assume that you know how to crochet. So I'm not gonna go through all of the motions of crocheting. I am using a 1.5 millimeter steel hook. Mine happens to have this handle. I can't even begin to function with just the plain steel hook in my hand. But if you don't have hand issues, then you can just use, you know, a steel hook. You can use whatever size that you are comfortable with. And then we're just gonna crochet. So the first stitch you're gonna do is a single crochet, but we're gonna put our hook through, and I always grab my tail. I do a couple stitches with my tail, and then that way I don't have to worry about securing that. So there's my single. I know it looks a little bulky, but it won't when we're through. So there's my single crochet in my first blanket stitch, and then we're gonna do 5 double crochet. Now I'm using US terms. If you're in the UK or another country that uses different terms, you're gonna need to look up what double crochet is in your terms. I think it's a treble crochet. I can't remember now. All right, so I've done 2 stitches with my tail, all right? And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do 1 more with the tail, if I can grab it. It's gonna be difficult. See, this is why I am not going to do an actual crochet tutorial, because you guys would lose your minds trying to learn from me. All right, and then I'm gonna let that tail go, and I'm gonna finish this stitch just normally, and then I'll show you. I'll get rid of the tail. All right, so I'm gonna kind of just tighten that up there with the tail a little bit, and then I'm just gonna cut it off, and it'll be fine because it's woven in there enough. I'm not worried about it coming loose. All right, so we've done 2 double crochet in there. We need to do 3 more. So 1, I hope you can see what I'm doing. 2, and I'm just working right under that blanket stitch. And 1 more. All right, so we did a single crochet in the first one, 5 double crochet to make our little shell or ruffle, and then I'm gonna do a single crochet into the next blanket stitch, okay? And then we're gonna go to the next stitch and do 5 double crochet again. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now it's up to you how you want to end this. You can do a single crochet in that last blanket stitch, or like I just do a slip stitch, so just to end it. And then I will cut that and pull that through. All right, and there we go. We have a cute little topper to our tag. Now I'm going to, let's see what I do with my needle. Where did you go? Oh, there you are. Okay, so I'm gonna thread this tail. Again, if this was gonna be a tuck spot or a pocket or something, and you weren't gonna see the back, I would just use the packing tape and, you know, kind of tape everything down. But it's a tag, so why is it that I can thread the needle just fine when the camera's not on, and then I turn the camera on and I can't do anything? Okay, let's just cut this and see if we can't make this work. Oh my gosh. I mean, really, I have not struggled at all threading this needle on any of the other ones that I've done. Oh, okay. All right. So we have our slip stitch here at the end. Okay. You see that? And I'm going to turn it around to the back, and I am going to, let's see, I'm going to just feed it underneath that blanket stitch, and then inside, and I'm just going to try to make a knot or two, and we'll add more glue then too. Okay, so just underneath the blanket stitch, and then through, and it should make a knot there for you. And then we'll just add a little bit of glue. Just to be safe. And then we can cut that. All right, and there we go. There we go. And that'll dry and it'll be fine. You won't even be able to tell that it's glued, and I think it's super cute. Super cute. Now, normally, I probably would have tried to make, you know, 3 shells, because the 2, I'm not loving that. So I might actually cut this out and do it again. I don't know. I might just leave it and add something so that there's a 3rd element there. I could just add a flower, or I'm sure there's something I could add to make it, you know, an odd number, because it just looks a little weird with just the 2, but I'll fix that later. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it now. All right, guys, I hope that this was in some way helpful, and at least inspiring for you. I know that I am not the best and greatest crocheter, but I am quite happy with most of the things that I've come up with here. So I hope that you at least found it interesting to watch me fumble through crochet. Please don't judge me too much. I used to be much better at it. But anyway, all right, guys, like I said, if you want to learn to crochet, just some basic stitches that you can add to your paper crafts and junk journals, head on over to Shandy's channel, and she's great at teaching. I learned the basic stitches in an evening, so you can do it too. All right, guys, have a fabulous day, and I will be back soon. Nick is coming back tomorrow, I believe, so yay. And Pixie is having surgery on Friday. She is getting spayed. So I'm not sure when one or both of us will be back, but we'll be back soon. And yeah, I hope you guys are healthy. I hope you're safe. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.